It all started one summer day, 1979, when at the young age of barely turning 18 and due to a terrible car accident, I died. If you see the image of the car, to give you a point of reference, the driver's door ended up by the center console. And there I was. My lifeless body was there, but immediately upon the impact, my soul, which a soul cannot inhabit a lifeless body. It detached. And as it detached, it went into what I learned to call the void. Now, when I say the void, it's not the void out there in the cosmos, but a void inside of us. That's something that I learned recently, not when I was barely 18. And I had a different understanding of what would happen when you die. When I suddenly found myself in the midst of the void, I realized that I didn't have a physical body and that I was still myself. I didn't turn into an angel or a spirit or anything like that. I was still myself without a physical body. That's when I began to wonder, where am I? And I asked myself three questions. Who am I? Who's my father? And who's my mother? Remember, we're talking about an 18-year-old who doesn't know much about life. And that's when I asked those three questions that today I know that it means, who am I? Where do I come from? And what's the purpose of all this? But those three questions were never answered. So I thought. I felt afraid, I felt confused. And one thing that I do remember very clearly is that I never thought or understood that I ever was Francisco Valentin. That's something hard to grasp, but I understood that I was myself, but never had ever been Francisco Valentin. Now, how do I know that? Because when I returned, I knew that I was Francisco Valentin, and I could tell the difference how I felt when I was on the other side, and I had no knowledge of ever being a physical creature, not Francisco Valentin or any other name or any other experience. I was just myself in the midst of the void. Today, I might call this pure consciousness. People have a lot of different definitions of words, but not trying to be in compliance with those words. I understood that I was myself, period. When suddenly I realized that there was a dim light approaching me. Now, let me be very clear on this. When I said a dim light approaching me, I am not talking about my physical eyesight. And many people claim that that's your astral side or spiritual side or whatever name they want to put in. Today, I know that it is an interpretation of something that cannot be described into words, but we can only interpret it as such so we can understand. In other words, light in the spirit world does not exist because light belongs to the physical body, to the physical world, to the physical surroundings that we have. But that something is transmuted through the brain as light, so I can give a definition of something. Okay. And at the end of my this interview, I will give a message that clarified all this. As that dim light approached me, I then realized that it wasn't one, but there were many. And it wasn't a light, but they were like, again, interpretation and definition of words. That's where everything started getting in conflict. And as they approached me, they began to swirl around me in a counterclockwise direction, at which point I understood that they were bathing me in this, what people call love, but I rather call it peace, because love is one to another. And what I felt was peace, total and abundant peace. as they were surrounding me. It's like if they were giving me this peace that they had within, and they were sharing that or surrounding me with that if it were a bubble. When I saw that light surrounding me, it was a circle of light. I knew that it was being created by some, let's say, entities known as spirits or souls. And my curiosity, and this is the human interpretation of that which took place, I understood that I wanted to see who it was or what it was. So it is like when you want to see an object in movement, that you move your head along with it so you can see it. Or when you look at I don't know if you've done this, that you look at the ceiling fan and you can see one blade if you focus on one only blade. That's exactly what I did. And where I captured the image that I could translate into an image later on, which I will be sharing with the audience, of more or less what it looked like. So you can have a point of reference. Of course, it was an image that I saw that resembled that. Then I stretch it up and I just, kind of make it as similar as possible, but not to claim that that was it. And at that point, when I took a glance and I was able to see one of them, I remember we're playing with words. We made eye contact, but it was more like an acknowledgement. I acknowledged its presence. It acknowledged my presence. And that's all it took. And as I was being surrounded by that peace to calm me down, because, like I said, I was confused. I was asking questions, where am I? Suddenly, I felt the presence of something much more powerful in a good way. It's like a huge cloud, dark cloud, casting everything around it and overpowering everything. And the next thing I know, I was falling in a funnel that it was getting narrower. And as it kept getting narrower, I began to feel the physical pain, physical body ache, that it became so unbearable that when a given point, as the funnel kept getting smaller and smaller, and I was going through that funnel, it became so unbearable that I took my first breath, opened my eyes, and that is the exact moment when someone was taking me out of my car. The accident took place at approximately 4 p.m. because I knew at that time what time it was. And when I was removed from the car and lay down in the grass and I look up to the sky, I realized that it was almost getting dusk because it was a summer day, getting dusk. You can do the math, and I was being removed from my car at approximately 6 p.m. That means that I was dead for 2 hours. And the impression of that experience, I don't think it, in terms of, figuring out how long it felt, it didn't feel more than 5, 10 minutes at the most. So what happened throughout those 2 hours is something that I still don't know. Yet I do know, as I want to keep my story, but still don't know what it is, uh, for obvious reasons that I further will explain. Uh, as to how do I know that I was dead? Well, I was driving with my friend on the passenger side, and when I asked many years later, after I found out those many things that happened to me, he told me, "You were dead on top of my lap for more than 5 minutes before they took me out of the car and they took me to the hospital." The story is very lengthy, but I was left in the car because I was dead, and a friend was, because we were traveling 2 cars, the other friend stayed with me, obviously, to claim my body when the police arrived. Another witness to that effect, not a witness of being there, is when I was rehearsing a lecture for another presentation. The person that saw the image of the car abruptly stopped the conversation and said, wait, in my 23 years of experience as a California Highway Patrol, I've never seen anyone survive in this accident. How did you? And I candidly replied, I did not. And after a few laughs, he said, that accident must have happened at approximately 60 miles an hour, which he was totally correct. And the impact must have dragged you for more than 10 feet, which was correct. Other doctors, medical doctors, have seen the wreck, and no one believes how I survive, how I'm walking. Physically speaking, you don't see anything. But internally, yeah, as I received the impact of the car, uh, I had 3 broken ribs, a metal strip of the car broke and it launched into my rib cage. It punctured my lung, collapsing it. It shattered my spleen beyond repair, and it lodged and punctured my kidney, plus all the internal bleeding that I had. Had I been alive, I would have bled to death in around 2 hours or maybe less. And I didn't go into surgery until after 9 p.m. So go figure. Uh, Actually, none of this makes sense uh, unless I had some kind of spiritual protection, which I didn't know at the time. And I'm questioning that today.
So,
Now, yeah, go ahead.
how did you explain this to yourself? I can imagine you go through this accident. Obviously, the recovery that follows is painful and takes up a lot of your time and energy, and that of your family, of course. But when you think back as an 18-year-old to this experience of not being yourself, of being into this void, you probably didn't have that vocabulary at the time, but
Mhm.
seeing this speck of light, what did you make of it? What did you think happened?
Well, again, because I was so young, I was born and raised as a Catholic. So that was the first roadblock that I had. When I tried to explain what happened to me, I was immediately shut down by all my family, my friends, religion. Someone told me, why don't you go to the priest and he might answer your questions? So I did. I went to the priest, I went to the confessionary, I did all the things that you had to say. And when I started talking and explaining what happened to me, I was asked to, at the end, I was asked to do, I don't know how many Hail Marys and the Lord's Prayer, and say, what did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. Uh, and I spent many hours. I remember spending many hours in my room, just looking at the ceiling and wondering what the heck happened. Uh, I had no answers. All I could do was replay the movie in my mind, trying to figure it out, but nothing made sense. That's when I took up on myself, uh, begin to read everything that I could, because at that point I said, you know what, I'm going to keep it to myself and take it to the grave. That's it. So I began to try to read everything that I could about what happened to me. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I needed that little spark that would trigger something in my mind and help me understand what happened. But then again, you have to remember we're talking about 1979. There was no internet. It wasn't my homeland, Puerto Rico. Uh, the local public library were very limited, and I didn't know where to start looking. Uh, in the bookstore, same thing. I mean, there's an array of books. Where do I start? The only thing that I knew was psychology. So I started reading books of psychology, but none of them make sense. So this is what I started doing. I took a book and I began to read. No, that's not it. And another one, that's not it. And another one, oh, maybe quiet, but not so. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So here's lesson number one. Don't believe everything that you read. And that was my first lesson. So I kept up with my life. I forgot all about it. I just, whatever I made of it, which was very limited, I just said, well, that's it. I'm not going to keep wasting my time. I have no answers. So what am I going to do? Drown into questioning and questioning what happened to me without having a life? No. So I forgot about it. I married. I became a professional in the insurance industry. I raised 3 beautiful children, and until one day, and the day was July 7, 2011, when a spirit of light manifested through my son's voice to remind me of an agreement that took place in 1979 in return for my life. In other words, my 20-year-old at the time, out of nowhere, because we didn't talk about any of these subjects, because remember, out of the blues, he just went into a spiritual trance, and a spirit of light spoke through him to remind me of that agreement. So if you go back to 1979, when that casting powerful cloud or whatever it was came upon me, and I was drawn to a funnel, 2 hours going by, 5 minutes to me, there's a huge gap right there. So that reminder fills that gap. And that spirit of light, as I was being reminded of that agreement, which I had no clue that it ever happened, first it answered all my questions. And this is how it happened. I was taking time alone with my 20-year-old at the time. He was going to college. He was on a summer day, July 2011. He was on vacation, summer vacation. My wife, coincidentally, was traveling from work. My youngest child, coincidentally, was studying abroad in the summer study program, and I was alone with him. And after spending a whole day, sharing and, having good conversation and everything, we were ready to call it the night. And that's when he told me, hey, Dad, I want you to listen to this piece of music that I like to listen whenever I feel, that I want to relax. I want you to listen to it. I was tired. We were already calling it the night, but something compelled me to say, yeah, okay, I'll be there. Let me go to the restroom and I'll be back. So I did. As soon as I came back and I approached the door frame, I didn't get yet into the room. At the door frame, I realized that he had his music kind of loud on his laptop. And it was one of those binary music that people use to meditate. I don't know much about that, but I could tell that it was, like those binary things. Like, he had it pretty loud. He was facing the opposite wall, so I could see only his side. And as soon as I approached the door frame, he said, look, Dad, how beautiful. I can see orbs all around me, but we are one. I realized that he has his eyes closed because remember, I was seeing one side of him. He was against the music pretty loud. There's no way that he could have heard me stepping in, which I still have not got into his room, and he was already talking. Yet I didn't think much of it, but then I approached and I realized that he had his eyes closed. He was moving his head rhythmically. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, it's beautiful, orbs all around everywhere, but we are one. And that's when I said, what do you mean that we are one? I thought he was making a prank on me. And that's when his voice turned unemotional. And he said, I mean, we're one. At that point, I still didn't realize what was going on. I thought he was making a prank on me. And I wanted to play the card with him. And I started asking, and how did all started? because I knew, but I didn't know that he could understand my question, because I actually wanted to throw him off so he can open his eyes and say, ha, I got you, or something similar. But it didn't happen. And that's when he started explaining things, answering questions that I kept asking, one on top of the other. And but the answer that I was getting was not the answer that I wanted to get. So I asked the same questions in different forms, yet I was still getting the same answer. And that's when something told me, my inner God told me, there's something wrong here. But I took advantage of it and said, okay. So I said in my mind, so you are into the game of Q&A, let me start asking questions. So I started asking questions and I was getting an answer. Kept asking another question, kept getting another answer. And he was actually answering all those questions that I could not get a straight answer from humanity. But it got to a point in which I was formulating the question, and before I finished my question, I was already getting the answer on my head. And that bugged the heck out of me. And out of frustration, I said, and what am I doing here? And that's when my son stopped moving his head, turned around, stood up, opened his eyes, and very energetically he said, don't you remember that you and I agreed for me to come down for you to help me do my job? He closed his eyes, turned around, sat down, and began to move his head rhythmically. And that's when I surrendered. Throughout that time, I never dared to touch him or interrupt him. And at that point, even worse, I wasn't, I just surrendered. And before it left, that was his last words, except that I asked him, and what am I going to do with this, all this? And he said, remember, we're one. Uh, it's part of it. And as you help me, you advance. When everything was said and done, I asked my son, do you remember what happened? And he said, yes, I do. I remember everything. Later, he told me that he remembered as if he always knew. And that's very critical, because this is information that we have known all along. It's just that we have forgotten. Later on another occasion, I asked him, wait a minute, do you, because I kept insisting, and I asked him, do you remember when you stood up and you opened your eyes and you, no, I don't remember that. I said, are you sure you don't remember that? No, that I really don't remember ever do that. So just imagine how much energy that spirit of light must have had to take my son out of the picture, took over his body, stand up, open his eye, tell me that very message, turn around, sit down, and allow my son to get back in. Just imagine. But going back to when the spirit of light left, he granted me unknowingly to me. I'm talking to you now because now I have been able to decipher everything that happened, and I can tell you a whole story from beginning to end. That time he left me what I learned. He gave, I believe that, I mean, it's not that I believe, it's a fact. He gave me a gift of learning higher truth. And that's when higher truth kicked in, not all at once, but little by little. And that's when higher truth, that was like a life review. Just, life review, what many people understand that life review is when you die, that your whole life is going to go through you and you're going to be judged or call upon what you did good or bad, and, time to reflect. Yet it's too late already. So while I was getting that higher truth, like a spark of live review, a memory spark. But I wasn't seeing things as a doer, because as a doer, I am observing what I'm experiencing, what I'm doing, and I'm only focusing on my situation and what I'm seeing from the immediate result. But as an observer, you are out of the picture and you are seeing the whole picture. And that's when higher truth kicked in. That's when I realized that, yes, indeed, in 1979, I died to ratify that there is life after death. Then another spark of memory recalled made me understand that in the year 2000, I did have an experience with my dying mother when she was dying from a brain tumor, and she began convulsing profusely. At one given point, we called the doctor. The doctor was doing visiting hours at the hospital. He checked her out and he called us outside and he said, yes, I knew that it was about to happen. I was expecting this. The brain tumor was growing and it was going to constrain one of the main arteries. She's not receiving, sorry, she's not receiving oxygen to the brain and she will die within a couple of hours. So please start making arrangements. Hold on. But when she started convulsing at 8 o'clock, within 2 hours turned into 10. She didn't stop convulsing. 10 turned into 1, 1 turned into 2, 3, 4 a.m. She kept convulsing nonstop. No physical body, to my understanding, can withstand convulsing for so long, but there she was. And of course, we stayed with her all night waiting for that solemn moment. That never happened because when at sunrise, exactly at sunrise, because I will never forget how the sun was coming out and she stopped convulsing, she asked to go to the bathroom. Me, my wife, and my aunts were there. We looked at each other in shock. And after she came from the bathroom, she wrote a note because she had a tracheotomy, so she couldn't talk, for my aunt and my wife to get out of the room and for me to stay. And my mother said, I'm sorry, my son, that I doubted you. Now I know the truth. Call a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. So I called a lawyer. We made all the legal arrangement. And 30 days after all the arrangement was said and done, she died, but not from the brain tumor. She died from asphyxiation. And that was a lesson for me. But I mean, I didn't see it at the time because I was so involved in this physical world that believed the medical field and didn't see, I mean, something strange. But the doctor eventually said, well, those things tend to happen. Oh, yeah, right.
What was the lesson for you?
Excuse me?
What was the lesson for you?
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. For the lesson to me was that there is divine intervention. It does exist. There is life intervention because if that intervention wouldn't have happened, I mean the end result, the legal end result, and family quarrels and all that would be hell. So she was given a chance to fix things up before departing. So yes, there is divine intervention, and that was the reason for me to go through that experience. Then another spark of light uh, came on, which I call higher truth or a life review. And it took me back to the year 2002 when I had what I learned to call a near death experience. Because remember, in 1979, it was a death experience. And now this one is a near death experience. And I know that I might be a little bit controversial on this because people tend to say that all that is a near death experience, although that term I, that term, the near death. Well, if you die, it's a death experience. It's not a near death. Near death is had in 2002. What happened to me in 2002 was that through that memory recall, which I didn't see at the time, but now I'm seeing as the observer. So that's what I'm able to describe to you, the lesson behind that. In the year 2002, I was uh, I was waking up early in the morning like every other day, and when I opened my eyes, I realized that everything was seen turn white, white as if I would have a veil that did not see me. I mean, I was able to kind of see, very fuzzy, but everything was white. Then I closed my eyes and realized that instead of turning everything black, when you close your eyes, everything kept being white. So I just opened my eyes wide, closed my eyes wide, and I said to myself, what's going on? When suddenly I began to detach from my physical body, going into the other realm, which I already knew because I was already there. So I knew where I was going. But I felt a lot of peace. I was very calm, primarily because, first of all, I was in the insurance industry, so I was overinsured. I was worth more dead than alive, and all the legal things were so, I had nothing to worry about at that point, and I let myself go. To give you a perspective, it felt okay. Imagine that I have a balloon full of air holding its peak with my hand, and another balloon empty, no air, holding in the other side. If I put both lips together and I release the air from one and transfer it to another, that's exactly how it felt. I was transitioning from the physical into the spiritual realm. Some people call it ethereal realm, or giving up again, playing with words. I was going into the spirit realm when suddenly I heard this voice very far away saying, "No, you cannot do this to me. You cannot leave me alone." That was my wife. And whatever was taking me little by little, just let me go. And I little by little returned. As I returned, by that time, uh, the ambulance had come on, and they were taking my pressure. And the only thing that I remember was that my blood pressure was extremely low. If you ask the medical field, I would have died from a heart attack. But in truthness, I was just transitioning, and my was beating less and less and less until my body stopped and I was already gone. And that was a lesson that was given to me to learn how perception works, how the perceptive mind works, and to understand why so many people keep claiming that I saw this, I saw that, there is, I went here, I went there, I saw this, I saw that, and can get it. There's no consensus to what's on the other side because it's a matter of perception, how you perceive things based on what you were implanted in your head that this or that should be like. And that's one of the first things to me, my perceptive mind could not comprehend that I was in 1979 at the void. Nothing happened. I didn't see God. I didn't see Jesus. I didn't see Buddha. I didn't see anything of that. I didn't see relatives. I didn't see what people call paradise. I didn't see anything. I just went into the void. But now I understand that it was a perception that I received to keep everything from being tainted with theological ties. And is the main purpose why I'm doing this, how perception works. And I do, when I do my live lectures, I do a small perception experiment with the audience, which let me see if I can do this here. This is the first time here. So let's do this. If I ask you to please close your eyes and tell me what's the first thing that comes to mind after I tell you these words. Please tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And this is the word, serenity. What do you see? Open your eyes and tell me, what do you see?
I see a tree with,
Okay.
I think, purple flowers.
Exactly. That's how your perceptive mind understood the word serenity. When I do this with the audience, some people see a tree, or they see a forest, or people see all kind of things. So that it is the interpretation that people gives to one word, serenity. And serenity had nothing to do with the tree. It had nothing to do with the forest. It had nothing to do with the ocean. It has nothing to do with the clouds. But that's what people see. the perceptive mind see what can make reference to it. And that will help you understand why I'm telling you that I saw on the other side a dim light. There was no tree in serenity, and there's no light, but I saw a light from my perceptive mind to be able to transmute what I understood to be a light. And you right now, you saw a tree to help me understand what you understood as perception. See? Yeah, it was a success, the experiment of today, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I loved it. So,
Okay.
one question that I had about your near death experience, you said you felt you were leaving this body, and then your wife said, no, like you can't leave. And then you felt the process being reversed. Do you think her desire for you to be here and to stay in this world, is this what kept you from not dying at that time?
It may be, but I cannot tell because if you go back to death experience, I came back. My mother experience, she came back and then went out. On this experience, I came back. So believe, because there are more events that I haven't done talking about. Those experiences were given to me to me or to taught me certain lessons. It's like when you have a child and you make him go through an experience, not for the child to go through it, but to get very close to it, uh, for you for teach him a lesson. I believe that's what happened. I don't believe that it was intended for me to depart because, come on, I died in 1979. Come back. I'm going through all this to leave. That doesn't make sense. That's a incomplete project. So, but I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was so uh, embezzled with the physical world that I didn't see it either. I mean, when I was at when they took me to the hospital, they did all the tests available. They found nothing wrong with me. Absolutely nothing. And guess what the doctor told me when I said, well, what's the diagnosis? He said, gastritis. Yeah, right. Gastritis, just waking up. I didn't have breakfast. I didn't have anything. I mean, come on. But I understood at the time, because remember, I work in the insurance industry. That was to be able to, file the paperwork for the insurance to pay all the treatment. So I went through that experience to learn how perception works.